and I'm still excited. Just so y'all know.
Okay, do that
Three,
again.
two, one. No, it's already live, so you can't say three, two, one on live.
Where's Danya?
I'm ignoring her. Yes, Mr. Walter Mosley. I think we are prepared. Can y'all please give a strong round of applause from our heads and our hearts? Welcome Mr. Walter Mosley to the stage. Please and thank you. Round of applause for Mr. Walter Mosley.
I'm having a hard time with my thing.
All right, all right. I'm gonna have a seat because we are live. I don't know how much you heard of that taping, that live recording we just had when my media personality made me re-record something that was live. How you doing today, sir?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited and happy that you are here. So first and foremost, welcome and thank you for coming out to the Doc Bookshop here in Fort Worth, Texas. We really appreciate it.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it's really great.
Awesome. All right. So I know we are here to talk about Ghalen, the newest release.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do was we're going to go back to early on in your writing career. But first, I wanted to challenge something. It says 62 books written.
Mm-hmm.
But the Oblivion series is 2 books in one. We gotta be. It's 3 more books in there. I think they need to rewrite everything.
No. But you see, the thing is that if you look at the front, each one has a publication like copyright. So it doesn't matter if they're both in the same book. They're 2 books because if you look at this side, it's one book, and this side the other. And whenever I sign them, I always sign both sides. So.
Oh, see, I didn't know. See, I thought I was getting one up on you.
Yeah.
It's 6 total books. It's 6 total. But yeah, no.
So it would be you thinking it's 59, but no, it's not.
Oh, okay. I thought I had you there. I thought I was on. I almost had you. So first things first, I want to do. I want to do an icebreaker, and so what I was going to do was ask you to list off all your books in alphabetical order. Pure craziness. That I heard somebody say, "Oh, this pure craziness."
Yeah, well. Yeah.
So, but what I do want to do is I want to do an icebreaker and do like a word association.
Okay.
So my word association, I'm gonna take 5 books and then 5 characters, and you say whatever comes to you, what you were thinking when you were writing it, or what you think about the character now, and that's the word associate. You have several characters and several books. Are you ready for the challenge?
I don't know.
All right, so this icebreaker is gonna be characters first.
Okay.
So this first character is Leonid McGill. What is it something that you think about Leonid McGill?
Well, I love Leonard McGill because his father was an anarchist communist who abandoned the family, and the mother died, and he hates his dad in a lot of ways, but still, he's been trained as an anarchist communist, and so that's actually the way he thinks. Not necessarily like for capitalism or anything like that, but this is he's working with unions. He's like with people in the street. He's also a criminal, but not anymore. He's not a criminal. He's trying not to be a criminal. It's very hard to not be a criminal.
Very tough. That was right in New York. So Leonid McGill series is an excellent series. So definitely pick that one up if you haven't had a chance to jump into that one. Next character. I think this is a fan favorite. The character Mouse.
Yeah, Mouse is wonderful. Mouse is Mouse is like the only black man in America who's not afraid of anything. It's like, because I mean, everybody pretend, and like if people are really afraid, you can tell because they pretend like they're not afraid. No, I ain't afraid of that shit. But they are because Mouse, you say something to him, and before anything else, the guy's dead. It's like, okay, and he said, well, he might kill you. You say, yeah, he might. I'm gonna be there. He's gonna be there. We're gonna see what happens.
Mouse is one of my favorites. Me and my brothers watched, of course, the movie Devil in the Blue Dress, but we watched the scene with Mouse when he was intoxicated and he pulled a gun on him. He pulled the second one out. I got you. That was one of our favorite scenes in the world.
Oh, yeah, right. He shot him with the second one, not the first.
And
So
so,
no shoot him. So okay, and they put that gun away.
got you. Next character, King Oliver.
Yeah, King Oliver's interesting because for me, he's like I really enjoy him because he's the first policeman I ever wrote about. You know, I don't really pay much attention to the police, or try not to, you know, because they always, you know, make me nervous. You know, the police. I guess I'm supposed to be grown up now and that's not true, but it is still true. You know, it is still true. And so he's a cop, and he really is a cop, and I love that about him. You know, but he can't be a cop because they turned on him too. You know.
Yeah, they tried on me good too. That was so frustrating. Joe King Oliver series. That's another series. It's going with so many books. The Joe King Oliver series is an excellent one. And just another side note, one of the books, Down the River Unto the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
I use that quote for every. I was mentoring a teenager, and I was telling him the idea of down the river unto the sea.
Mm-hmm.
No, my son. I take that back. It was my son who was about to be a teenager. He's going from middle school to high school. He's going from this little nook of life into high school, and down the river into the sea was my reference point because you're about to get into a lot, and you got to be aware of who you are in that situation. So Joe King Oliver helped me out when I talked to a teenager. It's rough. This next character, Tempest Landry.
Oh, Tempest. You know, that's the thing, right? Tempest. For me, Tempest is the most powerful, most wonderful person like in the world. He controls the he controls the separation between heaven and hell. And you know, because he's the, you know, the eschaton. I don't know, like, anybody know the eschaton? The eschaton is when the world ends. They have it in the Bible. It's a nice word. I like it, the eschaton.
I've never heard eschaton.
Yeah, eschaton. 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 You know, and he represents that, and I just love, because you know, here you are in the world thinking, well, the president's important and this king is important, you know, and they said no, it's this guy, this little hustler up in Harlem, and if Harlem said if Tempest says, okay, forget the separation between heaven and hell, it'll all fall apart, and he doesn't, but he could.
And that was the beauty of the book Tempest Tales. So that's a standalone book. Actually, no, it's not standalone. It has a follow-up.
It was the next one, yeah. And it was published by Paul Coates.
Paul, the wonderful Paul. We love Paul Coates.
Yes.
We here at the document, we love Paul Coates. All right. And so the last character I have on the icebreaker is the character Ghalen. Tell us what you think about the character Ghalen.
Ghalen is for me, is so interesting, you know, because he's, you know, we were talking backstage, like, about, you know, people look at kids and they have ideas. Okay, that's a 13-year-old boy. And if you say that, then you have an idea. Well, he's like this and he's like that and he's like this. You know, he might be a lot, or maybe not so much, but it falls in a general thing. And, you know, but we all know, like, a lot of kids, like my father, I was saying, like, my father was, when he was 7, his mother died. When he was 8, his father died. When he was 9, he jumped a freight car in New Iberia and went all the way to Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, looking for his mother's father, his maternal grandfather. And the grandfather, when he got to him, he said, "Oh yeah, okay, you my son, you my grandson. That's right. You can sleep on the porch, but I'm not gonna feed you." You know, and so at 11, my father was a full-grown man. He was still a boy, but he was also a full-grown man, which is like, you know, I mean, it's that thing that most Americans don't know. But when they read about it, like when they read about Twill, for instance, you know, they begin to understand. Say, oh yeah, that he's grown up. You know, of course, Twill is a sociopath, but you know, I like sociopaths. Everybody should like sociopaths. You know?
No.
Yes, because if you start to list the most successful people in the world, they're all sociopaths. Every single one. And there's a proof, like, if you're a good person, like a non-sociopath, and you own, let's say, like a little apartment building of a couple of units,
Okay.
and there's a lady, she lives on the 3rd floor, and she's up there and she's 95, She can't even come down the stairs anymore. She can't pay the rent. That's a fact. Now, if you're a good person, you bring her groceries, help her out, do this and that. Don't worry about the rent. Uh, if you're a sociopath, you kick her ass out on the street, and then you get somebody new in there, and you're making more and more money. I mean, and that's the lowest level of sociopath. We got a president.
Sure. All right. The second part of icebreakers. As opposed to doing specific characters, we're going to go books. And so this again, it's what you think, what comes to you, what you were feeling at the time. This first book is Charcoal Joe.
Oh yeah, Charcoal Joe.
Yeah. I love some Charcoal Joe.
Yeah, well, Charcoal Joe has a lot. I was just thinking, I wanted somebody who Mouse kind of patterned himself after, Yeah, and I always figured, and I still figured that one day Mouse may kill Charcoal Joe, because that's what you do to people who they teach. They say, "Well, you taught me, so now I'm gonna show you how it works." Yeah.
And so yes, me and Charcoal Joe, that was a good reading. This one is the book is Debbie Doesn't Do It Anymore.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, go on.
No, that one I was very shocked at the entire book. So just tell me what you think. Okay.
Anybody here read Debbie Doesn't Do It Anymore?
Debbie Doesn't Do It.
Look at that. Nobody read it.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
there's somebody. Wait.
This one.
They're all in the back. They're in the last row. Well, I forget who I was talking to. We were talking about pornography. And I don't know why, and I don't even remember what we were saying, but I turned to him at one point and I said, well, Debbie doesn't do it anymore. And I thought, wow, what a great title. And I thought it was a title of something comical, and it wasn't. And when I finally started writing it, it wasn't comical at all. No, but I still want to make it. There's a guy who lives in Portugal who wants to make a movie out of it. And I would really like to do that. It would be fun,
Gosh, and then let's go to the inaugural book, The Devil in the Blue Dress. What were you thinking about when that one came out?
Well, I had written a book called Gone Fishing, and again, another book published by Paul Coates, but nobody wanted to publish it because they said, well, white people don't read about black people. Black women don't like black men, and black men don't read. So who's going to buy your book? And I went, okay, all right. I don't like that, but okay. And I wrote another book, again with Easy and Mouse, but it was, and I was just writing it. I was just writing because writing is fun. I was just writing it, and I was about halfway through, and I said, this kind of sounds like a mystery, a crime novel. And so, so it came from that. That was really fun.
That was a good one. That was a good one. And before this is the one we're going to get to later on, but what mindset were you into when you wrote Ghalen?
I had no idea. I mean, I can say that I was going to write it. I wanted to write a romance. I wanted it to be about this young man named Ghalen. And so I thought what I would do is I would write the first 5 pages about his father and mother, Robert and Jamila. But I was at page 63 even before Ghalen appeared, because I was so much enjoying, because I think of all books are action books. They're just different kinds of action. People who are trying to solve a crime, trying to solve a problem, trying to to conquer a mountain, in a war, and any kind of thing. It may be oppression, something, but it's a struggle or actions. In romance, love is an action, but it's a very difficult action to define.
Love in general is different. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an impossible thing to, not impossible, but there's just a little twist. Somebody says something in a certain way, or hears something in a certain way, and so I wanted to face that challenge on all kinds of different levels, and so I wrote Ghalen, A Romance in Black.
which is an excellent book, excellent book. And we're going to get to that one a little bit later. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take it back to how it all began. So if I'm not mistaken, you started off as a writer, which some would consider later than normal. You started writing
Mid-30s.
mid-30s.
Yeah.
And so can you give some insight into where you were in life, what got you into writing, and how was the breakthrough?
Well, I'm from California, and the thing about California, like any place else, let's say like a normal age for retirement is 70, right? Something like that. You get 70 years old, you retire. Women in most places in the United States, if they're retiring, you ask them what they're going to do. They say, well, I want to be with my grandchildren and maybe great grandchildren even. I'm going to try to socialize my husband and bring him to place and get him to do things. And, and like that, But in California, you ask a lady and she might say, well, I'm still very limber. I can touch my toes. So I was thinking of starting a ballet company and we will start performing. And you say, lady, you're crazy. But then next year they're performing at the White House because that's the thing. And that's how I feel. I was just like doing stuff. I've been a potter, a cook. For 16 years, I was a computer programmer. I was, working for various, places. One day on a weekend, I was at the Mobile Oil company, and it was a Saturday. I was alone. I was coding, and I got tired of coding, so I wrote a sentence. On hot, sticky days in southern Louisiana, the fire ants swarmed, and I was like, wow. I would read a book like that. So maybe I could be a writer just like that. I'm 34, 35, and I said, I'm going to start writing and see where that goes. And here we are.
That was the breakthrough. So you started with a path and a vision and was just like, I'm going with it.
Yeah, and I knew it was fiction because I had never been to Louisiana and I'd never seen a fire ant. So I made it up, even though I was pretty sure it was kind of true.
And I see it, yeah, fire ants down here in Texas, if you've seen one, you deal with them, they rough. So
Yeah.
Lucky you early on. But that's kind of a strong pivot. Was there any fear in going into it, or was it just like guns ablazing, I'm in it, I'm on it?
No more than that lady that's doing ballet at 70. You know what I mean? It's just like you just do it. I mean, like the thing about California is like, well, you just do it. It's okay, so what? I remember I was in Vermont, but I was talking to my friend Ken, and he had this friend named Dagmar, who's related to Jim Thorpe somehow, but it was like Dagmar, and he says, well, Walter, Dagmar is hitchhiking across country. And I'm like, really? And Dagmar was taller than me, at least 3 times stronger than me. But Ken said, I don't want her to go alone, I want her to be safe, so can you go and protect her? And, it's kind of true. If a guy's with you, it's kind of protection. But, and so I said, okay. And we hitchhiked from Vermont to Oregon. Like, that was like, wow. It was like, but, that's what you did, right?
That's some serious fearlessness.
They sound fearless because I wasn't afraid, but I didn't know how to be afraid. My parents hated it.
Yeah. And so, in writing or in becoming a writer, what came first for you? Was it the building of a character, or was it building the story, or what did you excel in first, or which part did you excel in first?
Well, when you go to the beginning of Devil and Blue Dress, I think that's the definition. Like, I just started writing. I said, as I was surprised to see a white man walk into Jopley's bar. Not just that he was white; he had a Panama hat and bone shoes and white silk socks. And he said, he looked kind of tough. He said, but that's okay because I've been in World War II and I've seen enough white boys die to know that they're just afraid to die as I was. That it was that kind of thing. And by the time I was at the end of the first paragraph, I knew what the book was. I couldn't have told you, but I knew. I knew. I said, okay, I'm gonna keep following this line until I get there. And I did.
Which part was the most challenging when you were starting out? Because that seems like that came kind of naturally and smoothly, and there was no hiccups. Which part of being a writer when you started off was the most challenging?
Well, when you got a friend who's like really like his People like him. He's good looking. He does this. He does kind of like you. You
Yeah,
know.
I'm that for
And
it.
and like and then and so he meets these girls and he spends time with them and you say, well, so when you took her home, brought her upstairs, what was the toughest part about it? There are no tough parts. It's just like, okay, we went upstairs and we stayed up there, But the idea that I love writing so much, it's like, I mean, of course, things are really hard, that things are really very challenging, whatever. But if you love doing it,
Yes.
it's a whole other thing.
And because I try to read almost everything you put out, and the writing book that you put out on how to become a writer, you put in there write every day.
Yeah.
And I made it about a week. So how do you get to the writing every day? Because I know it says in there just write something, but sometimes.
No, wait a second. Sometimes what?
I was about to blame my babies, but sometimes I just don't want to write. So what do you do when you have that moment?
I don't care if you don't want to write. I mean, you write you should have to do it at least for 6 months straight before you know whether or not you want to write. The idea that you don't want, I mean, you're not used to doing something. It's like, when you stop, smoking or stop eating, banana splits or whatever, the first few days it's kind of hard. I want that banana. I want that cigarette. But then after a while that goes away and it becomes, part of a routine, you know. So it's not it's a little bit of a struggle. But if you do it and you say, well, I'm going to write an hour every morning, you know, even people with children can do that. I know they tell me they can't, but they can.
Because I was definitely gonna blame my babies. It's their fault. Their schedules are busier than mine. It becomes a challenge.
The kids hate to wake up in the morning. Just let them sleep an extra hour. That's it. You know?
That leads me into to the character development part. But I want to point out that when you write about teens and young adults, you tend to write, or at least I've noticed that you write them with a sense of maturity, independence, a strong level of intelligence. Is that on purpose when you were writing about a teen or young adult, or what brings that about?
Well, I do it a lot, not always, but I do it a lot. And the idea is, characters have to be attractive in one way or another, And Mouse is attractive, because of the way he kills people. There's one of the Mouse stories I really liked it, but it's kind of a little upsetting. He he was driving, somewhere like, in an empty part of California, and a marshal stopped him, and he put handcuffs on him behind his back, and he was and he grabbed him by his shirt, and he pulled him close, and he said, "Nigga, I'm gonna kill you." I must explain this to Ethan, and he said, "So then, I just bit his throat." And I just kept my teeth on it until he stopped holding me. And that was so much fun to write. But if I wrote it about a child, it would be very disturbing. And so I don't usually.
That's a tough one. So in character development, what part of the character development do you think is the most important aspect of it, or the one that you tend to put a lot of emphasis on when you're developing a character?
Well, I think the best way to understand my thoughts about character development, rather than talking about, big characters, because there's a lot to say and different kinds of stuff, and it happens. But like, let's say that, two people are in a restaurant. They're having a conversation. The conversation is about the story and the plot and something that happened and all this other stuff. But while they're talking, the waiter comes up. And most people when they're writing that, they say, well, the waiter came up and he said, what do you want? And then, and they say, and then the waiter goes away and it brings them what they want. But, so, well, who is that waiter? Like, is he wearing an apron? Is the apron clean? Or is it dirty? Or is he happy to be at this job? Or is he not happy to be at this job? Are his shoes shine? I mean, anything that will, because what you're doing is you're looking for all of the elements of, kind of, not deep elements, just what he looks like, but those will lead you somewhere else. And your readers, every reader looks at things differently. And so they start to create. And that understanding that character is going to help you with all the rest of the characters, because there's a voice to the novel that allows you to, it's not just one person, it's every person, not just the main person, it's all the side people. It's all of that.
Yeah. And now, is there a character that you've developed? Because, like you said, we know the big names. We're not going to focus on the big names. Is there a character that you developed that you think deserves more shine and more attention? And what is it about that character?
Well, I just wrote a short story. I wrote the Awkward Black Man, but now I wrote a new one called Clandestine Black Men. It's 12 stories I wrote, and one of them is about a minister. No. It is about a minister, but the main character is a judge, and and it's like, like kind of not in Atlanta, maybe like 10, 20 miles outside of Atlanta. It's little towns, and he's a judge in this little community. But when he was a kid, he went to this church that the big, always every town has a big church that not everybody can go to. You get in, but you realize, oh yeah, can we help you? Well, why don't you sit outside? You can hear it out there. And so, but his parents were poor, but they were there, and the minister seduced his sister. The sister had a baby, had a nervous breakdown. The baby had a baby. That baby, the grandchild, has now murdered somebody, and nobody, the minister thinks nobody knows this except the woman, but the judge actually saw it happen, and so he hates this guy, but the guy wants him to help the kid, and he wants to help the kid too, because that's his nephew, his grandnephew, and I've just been writing about that character. It's really fun and has an interesting ending, but I decided I want to make him a detective. Because I've never had a detective in a small town, and for a black judge, to be doing that sounds like fun to me.
And I want to making him a detective after all, because that was to that character that was a lot. And at the end, when you said make him a detective, my brain instantly went to a thought that I had about how you write mystery and detectives, and I equated that to Michael Jordan's fadeaway. Because I'm like, the detectives that you write and the mysteries that you write, it is picture perfect, very reminiscent of Michael Jordan's fadeaway. It's a go-to move that is almost unstoppable, and I thoroughly enjoy seeing it because it's a pretty move too. I don't know who all loves basketball, but if you don't go to YouTube and just look up Michael Jordan's fadeaway, you'll see Walter Mosley's novels and mystery. Okay. So what I want to do, because we are done with our character development, something that I always thought was cool was genres, how you like to write in multiple genres. In an interview I watched a while back, you mentioned not liking being forced into one genre because on the assembly line, sometimes you don't want to put the tire on. Sometimes you want to put the back window on.
Oh, I did say that. I remember that.
And so,
Yeah.
so tell me about why writing in multiple genres is something that's in your wheelhouse besides the
Well, I think genres the same. One of the reasons that I live in LA and New York, I love New York, but New York is the literary center, and all these literary writers, who they get all the awards, they get the Pulitzer, the National Book Award, and all these other things, and they write these very, kind of serious, semi-philosophical books about, people that supposedly are expressing, all this stuff. But I mean, people don't read to learn shit, people read to have fun, to enjoy, to identify, to see. The fact that even the act of reading is the act of creation. Because, you write a book, but it's just words on a page. And when you read that book, you create the book. That's your book. And I had an experience once about 25 years ago. I was doing a talk, and did a reading, and a guy says, "Hey, Mosley." I go, "Yeah, I was in LA." He goes, "You got that character, that mouse?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, in that book, he was in this green house on Danker Street." And I went, "Uh-huh." He said, "I was born in that house." Now, there's two really interesting things about that. Number one, I made up the house, right? Like he couldn't have been in a house I made up because I made it up, but I didn't build it. But he was born in that house because I had so closely created something that he then turned into something that belonged to him. That and that's what writing's about. So that's why you read science fiction or mystery or coming of age or so-called women's literature or like whatever or that's why a lot of people in this room probably read about Black people. It's fun, you know, and it's important. And so whenever I'm trying to talk about something, like when I wrote Blue Light, I had a question in my mind. Because I'm not a very religious person, I'm not very spiritual. I'm just not, but I believe in a soul because I feel like I have one. Maybe I don't, but I feel like it, and I wanted to write a book in which I could delve into that question. Now, you could write a mystery where, I hire you to find my soul, but, that's kind of silly, or, and there's different kinds of things you can write, but I wrote Blue Light, which is kind of, alternative fiction, science fiction, and that was why I did that, and I always, my father, it's like, he moved to Houston when he was 9. And, and I said, "Dad, what's Houston like?" He said, "Well, I'm a Houstonite." He said, "I'm a cowboy." And I was a kid, in California. I said, "Dad, the cowboys are all white." And he said, "That's what you think, you know." And I've always wanted to write that, and I've written a little bit the West, and I got to do some more though. But I mean, that's the idea that whatever you're trying to do, there's a genre to fit it. To write about love, it's like this is like, I know it's mostly women and mostly women read and stuff like that, but love is it belongs to men and women and children. It belongs to dogs and cats and uh, it belongs to all kinds of people. And so I like to go from genre to genre when I'm writing different kinds of stories. This is like Ghalen is a story about people loving each other in situations that are so difficult. And but because of that, they're so beautiful.
Completely agree. Uh, I am because I want to get into Galen, it's the way the book is written. It's so many different directions we can go into. I'm gonna let go of my genre question,
Okay.
and I'm gonna let go because I had another genre question. But I think it's a good time to jump into Galen.
Okay.
Because you led me right there. It was an alley-oop, and I just finished it for you. So Galen, a romance in black. In this book, my brain instantly goes Robert Jamila first. And like you said, in several pages, it took a while to get to Galen. What was that intentional, or is that just where the story took you?
Well, no, no, yeah, I thought I was going to do 5 pages and I jumped right into Galen. But the thing was, is they fell in love, and they're very different. Robert is, on the spectrum, some version of autism going on with him, but he's very smart and he's a vegan cook, because he wants to bring health to his community. And then you have her. She's a scientist. and she's a doctor. And when she goes to the museum, she looks at every painting in the museum and she reads what the curator said on each thing. And that if you asked her afterwards, she would know it all. You know, Robert goes in there and he sees one painting and looks at it for 3 hours. He just says, "Damn," and he looks deeper and deeper and deeper into it. They have something for each other, you know, and it's all of it is unexpected, you know. And you know, and she's looking at him at one point saying, if I was talking to my mama said, get your ass up and get out of there, because you don't want to be with this guy. But her father, who she never really knew, she says he would say, give him a chance, see what he's like, test his heart before you make any decision. And for me, like, you know, this is all about, you know, it's love, it's the past, you know, the father that's you know, supposedly dead, you know, it's the mother, it's them, it's then later it's Ghalen. These are things that are like, you know, that kind of move all through our lives, you know, and it's really important. And it's, you know, there's not, I mean, because beauty at some point, you know, I mean, that's the great thing about children. Beauty for children is what they love.
Yes.
You know, but it's the same thing for adults, you know. I mean, as much as you say, well, you know, I want a woman that looks like this and like that, and you know, yeah, you do, but that's not love. That's something else, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, you know, and that's okay.
And speaking of her mom, I gotta tell you, I dislike her mom. Jamila's mom, I dislike her. Her attitude is a little bit off-putting. And it was like, it was okay, and because Robert
Reynolds said the same thing. She said to me 6 times. She said, "I hated her. I hated her." You know, so okay. Yeah.
But see, and the cool thing was the way you wrote Robert humanized her,
Yeah.
which made it so cool for me. Robert's character, being on the spectrum with some sort and form, still had the same vision as Jamila in wanting to heal and help people. Was that on purpose, or how? Because his path was his path through the body in a holistic way.
Mm.
Hers was more of a scientific way. Were you intentionally making them healers or on that kind of path?
I should have been,
Oh.
but I didn't. You know, like it's just at one point or another. You know, you know, because they're both doing the same things, but I wasn't thinking about that. You know, I just wasn't. But then I realized, oh, it's look, I got this is great. I can use it. But you know, I wasn't thinking it. I just wanted them, you know, because because they didn't love each other because they do the same things.
Right.
They love each other because they do different things. One of the things that Jamila thinks, which I think is, I also think, is that people look at, most people who look at the world look at it through all these lenses that are in the back of their mind, things that they learned when they were 5 years old, when they were 10 years old, when they were 15 years old. And then none of these things are true. They don't, you know, start talking to people, well, you know, Chinese people can't drive. Well, you know, white people smell in the rain. You know, people make up stuff, you know, and you kind of go, what? What are you talking about? You know, but Robert only looks at what's right in front of him. And he sees that completely,
Yes.
which is what he did in the museum.
Yes.
And you know, and that for her is a moment where she can actually trust.
Yeah.
Because the mother has all these ideas,
Yes.
and they're all wrong. But you know, it's her mother; she loves her, but they're wrong, her ideas. And Robert says, you know, and there's a moment in the book where she realizes, you know, like most people do nowadays, it's too expensive to be a doctor. You can't be a doctor, so somebody has to run you, like some insurance company or some investment company or some hospital. And what they do is they say, you have 14 minutes with each patient. 14 minutes. And so, but she's a doctor, you know, and everybody thinks that's so, you know, wonderful and important. And so she doesn't want to be a doctor. And he says, Okay, don't be a doctor. Be a scientist. You could be a doctor without borders now and then the rest of the time you could be studying how to, to make people better. And that's what she needed, right? And that's what we need in life. We need people to understand who we are, what we want, and where we want to go, and share it with you, not like in some kind of logical way, but in a passionate way. In the same way, Robert thinks when she wants him to, because Ghalen is so smart, they want to keep on, bumping him up in grades. And Robert says, no, yeah, I don't want that. And she says, well, he's smarter than all the kids in class. And the guy said, well, he's gonna be smarter with it than anybody in any class and anywhere he is. Does that mean he can't have no friends? And that is where, that's what the book is going after, the understanding, that, and also the tragedies.
Yeah. And then it's like the social aspect of it for Robert to be he's not antisocial, but he's not outgoing social. It's like he wanted that for Galen. He wanted him to have, for lack of better terms, a regular life.
Yeah.
Which was in another form of love. What I got when I was reading it, there were several aspects of love represented, not just romantic love. It was a lot of not spectrum love, but love in different areas, not just romantic. Was that intentional, or was that something that came from the characters?
Well, I don't believe that you can ruin a book by telling people things that happen in the book. You do that with jokes. If you miss the punchline, then you messed up and the joke's no good. But uh, uh, at one point, you see, there's Galen and his friend Bruno and their friend Lovely. Lovely is a Persian woman and well, girl, because they know each other from the age of 6. At one time, Galen has to peel off and do things because things going on in his life. And those two, they get together. Bruno's kind of, he's a bad temper. He's, kind of gang related, not really, but kind of. And so Galen works really hard to get him out of trouble, but he's like in jail and then he has to go somewhere else. And him and Jamila start to hang out. But Jamila, is in a way Bruno's girlfriend. And so when, excuse me, Lovely. But so anyway, but she wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning and says, I got to go do my maid job at this hotel. And so she leaves. And then the knock on the door, Galen is sure it's her, but it's really Bruno. And there he is in his underwear, in his, woman's place. And so what happens is Galen gets hit really hard in the middle of the head and he thinks, God, he socked me. This happened once before in their life. He socked me. But really he shot him in the head, And the thing is that the police wanted him to testify against Bruno, and he refused because he understood what happened. And whether he's going to be mad at him or not going to be mad at him, he's going to work it out with him himself. He is not going to do it through the police. And, which is the thing. Snitching, I don't know. I mean, people snitch. I mean, I don't understand that. But I do understand betrayal. If you betray your friend, that's wrong, and he's not going to do it. And that's another kind of love, right?
To not betray is a form of love, or you saying betrayal is a form of love? You're saying not betray.
Not betraying.
Okay.
Not betraying him.
Yes,
Because,
well,
he can't because this is his friend, and he understands the situation. It's not like he's clean. It's not like he chased him down and shot him or something. He was like he just completely lost his temper, which he shouldn't do, of course. But that's another thing, and he's not going to learn how to control his temper by going to prison. So,
And so and we'll get to y'all questions in a little bit. I think I'm gonna have a couple more questions with Ghalen, and then I'm gonna get audience question and participation. Thank y'all so much. I know I feel like I'm up here talking because I'm not engaged with y'all, but I'm excited, so I'm going right back here.
But you feel engaged with I do.
So, the aspect of love, when you I said this before, but in writing in a new genre, it seems like, or in an alternate genre, you don't take a traditional path or focus on it. So the a romance in like a romance novel, this doesn't have like the traditional romance path of it.
Mm-hmm.
You meet somebody, you fall in love, you have like kind of a world relationship, or you have troubles, you break up, you get back together. That doesn't have this feel to it.
No.
Do you intentionally write in a new genre to kind of bend it from the norm?
Well, actually, it's going back to the original. I mean, first romantic, things called romantic literature comes like 2,500 years ago, in the Mediterranean and Greece, later in Rome. And then at the turn of the 20th century, just before the 20th century, in the 19th century, because used to be people would write books about kings and queens and pirates and really rich people, and people beyond the reach of everyday people. Yeah. But because everybody was starting to buy books, people started saying, well, why don't we write about everyday people? That's why you have like a Tale of Two Cities, Madame Defarge. That's why you have Ishmael and Moby Dick. These are everyday people. They're working. They're living lives, but there's drama in those lives. There's meaning in those lives. There's feeling in those lives. And so that's closest to what I was going for. But there are people in love, and in relationships, and trying to understand, that who they are through how they know other people.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, y'all, the book Ghalen has so many aspects of love. So if you don't have yours, definitely go meet Donna or Danya at the front, and you can get your book at this time. But the book Ghalen, it has twists and turns. It's gonna make you laugh. It's gonna make you cry. It's gonna make you feel something. So this book is an excellent book. I highly recommend it. Please, please, please grab your book. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna open it up for audience participation. I know I ate up a lot of time in having conversation, but I do want y'all to be involved because I know with 60 plus novels, I still think it's more. I still think the two things, it's gotta add more books, but that's just, so 60 plus novels. I know everybody got some questions out here. Don, can you assist with the microphone? Or actually, no, let me stand up. I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna take the microphone from people. And if you got a question, just raise your hand and I'm gonna come to you. Miss Emma, you know I'm coming to you first. Already. I'm right here. I ain't going nowhere else. So if you got a question, just be ready and I'll come right to you.
Thank you. Good evening. This Joy Wallace is my accountability partner, so we listen to Ghalen, walking every day. So I want to know, what was your inspiration for putting somebody on the spectrum with a medical doctor? Because we live in such a society where we all want to hang out with doctors or whatever our profession. So what was your inspiration?
Well, it's funny. When I wrote the first 2-3 chapters, like I wrote it and I read it again. I said, there's something about Robert that's not I'm used to in every day. And I kept writing and writing, and I discovered that he was on the spectrum. Honestly, it was like that's some part of my brain wanted him not to be, and so writing the book made me make those decisions. But then working it out, and it was wonderful to discover how Jamila and Robert were so perfect for each other. It's like these people were perfect. And and it's hard. And I think that's really the most romantic thing in the book. They were perfect for each other. And it's like you say, people getting the clicks. Well, I gotta, what is that Chris Rock says? He says, well, a banker marries a banker. And a cracky head marries a cracky head, and it's in a way you say, okay, fine, yeah, but there's all other kinds of potentials, for love and meaning and growth, and especially in the world we live in today.
All right, got another one right here.
Walter, my question for you is this. I grew up on 84th and Figueroa, not too far from where you did in LA. And was it ever your thought that it was your mission to resurrect Black Los Angeles from the likes of Chandler and Elroy and all the rest of those people that in their works of fiction diminished Black Los Angeles, and you came in with your stories and you presented a robust and rich and beautiful history of Central Avenue to Watts, really telling the story of Black Los Angeles that had really never been put in fiction. And I'm just wondering, was that a conscious mission of yours to do that, or did it just evolve organically?
Well, it kind of happened. You see, I wanted to write about black male heroes because in my life as a child, there were all these black male heroes. You know, all these wonderful people who loved you, who cared about you, who were there for you. You know, the way that you know Black America is portrayed, it's not that. You know, it's very rarely. Oh yeah, I remember once I was in an airport, and my father's friend George, who's a little bit older than my father, and he had his grandson. And I didn't know it was George, by the by. I just saw this man. He had the grandson. I don't know. It's like 3 maybe or something. He's playing, and George had these really big hands. He just let him play and play and play until he fall asleep, and then he would play a little bit more and a little more, and then he'd fall asleep again. You know, that was the thing. The attention that this black man, was paying to this child was extraordinary. You know, and then later on, I realized he looked up and said, Walter, and it was George, my father's friend. You know, I want that guy to be in my books. You know, I want people to see it and feel it and understand it, because if you understand how beautiful something is, then when something bad happens, you really feel it. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. To you know, that's why we write. That's why people read, to feel things, to try to understand things. So yes, it was my intention, but not necessarily directly. I said, well, I got to put these people in a place. Well, they're going to be in Los Angeles. Well, they're going to be on Central. Well, you know, they're going to be doing this. They're going to be doing that. You know what I'm saying? And so it happened, but it wasn't like a plot. You know, I didn't plan it all out. You know.
All right, we got another one right here.
Could you say a word about one of the things that I think is so interesting about Easy Rollins is his sense of there's a universality about his love that includes his love for Jesus and for Feather and Mouse the Killer. Could you just talk a little bit about that expansive inclusion of his?
Well, you know, a thing I can talk about. If I talk about Mouse, inside of that, my father had a friend. I don't remember his name, but he's a friend. He's a guy. His regular job was hijacking liquor trucks, and so he hijacked the liquor truck, and he'd come with this big crate with 12, you know, quarts of whiskey. And he said, Roy, I just got this. I don't even got no place to put it. So I want you to hold on for me. And he would leave the box there and he'd go. And he'd come back in a week, you know, and 3 or 4 bottles are gone. My parents had a party and, you know, somebody needed, you know, a present, you know, whatever. And so and he didn't even look. The guy didn't even look. He just said, hey, how much you own? You know, and he'd take the money and he'd go, you know, put the bottles with somebody else. It's just the way he did it. He was a weird guy. But anyway, he was playing dice in a barber shop, and at the end of the thing, you know, the guy he looked at one guy and said, "Man, you owe me a nickel." And the guy said, "Man, I don't owe you no nickel," and he shot him and killed him. I mean, he just and he went to prison. You know, I mean, okay, you know, but that was my these are the people my father knew. You know, these are people in my father's life. And, you know, I mean, it's not only true for black people. There's certain communities and certain people where the police, you know, they really don't care. They say, okay, he did it, you know, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't, you know, but and so you have to have your own community. This is gang life in big cities. Gangs start because people are protecting themselves. You know, they go to all kinds of other places. Say, oh, I could sell drugs to all those people too. Things we don't like. But the thing is that you love your child as much as you love your friend who hijacks liquor trucks. You know, and you're never going to sit there and think I should turn him into the police. No, you shouldn't. You understand? I mean, does that make sense? It's a kind of a logic that you have. Your son, your son comes home and he's done something terrible. That's you have to think about that. What should I do? What's the best thing to do? What's the best thing for me? What's the best thing for my son? What's the best thing for the victim of something? I mean, it's just that's for real. I believe in the law, absolutely, but I also believe that there's a question about everything. You know.
All right, we got another question right here. Here you go.
Hi, Mr. Mosley.
Hello.
Very pleased to meet you. My question is, do you work on one novel at a time, or
That's a very good question.
do you have several characters, several novels?
Well, I have lots of characters in each novel. So here's the thing. I write every day. I think of writing the way in the beginning of the 20th century, Sigmund Freud thought about psychoanalysis. You lie down on the couch, you freely associate, you go home, all these things happen in your mind. Next day you come back, you lie down on the couch again, and there's new thoughts in your head. You're developing, you're going deeper into yourself, definitely unconsciously, into the unconscious, but things come out, okay? Now, I write every day, 7 days a week, 3 hours a day, all the time. If 365 days in a year, 360 of them I'm writing, okay? Now, I finish a book. I turn it in on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I start a new book. Now, 4 weeks later, the editor sends me back the book I turned in and said, these are the changes I think you need. And I consider them, and either I make them or I don't. But I have to do that. So I stop with number 2 and I'm working on number 1. Then I turn number 1 in and I finish at number 2 at some point, and I turn that in. And so I start number 3, And so there's always like 3 books around. But when I'm working, I only work on 1 book. That every day that I'm writing, it's just one book. And then every once in a while I have to switch. Okay, now I'm on the other book. And that's every day.
Awesome. We got 2 more questions. Oh, I got these 2 back here, and I can get 2 up there, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
I have loved your writing since Devil and Dress. I think I've read that book twice. But anyway, I'm really curious as to who you read. Who are some of your favorite authors?
Well, I read all over the place. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Langston Hughes, a guy named Roger Zelazny, who's, nobody knows anymore, but he's a science fiction writer, unbelievably good writer. I'm all over the place. Whatever there is to read, I'm going to read it. I'm going to, if I like it, I'm going to read it. So, but I read for fun. I don't equate writing and reading. I think I have a story. I was walking down the street with 2 other writers, and there was a woman who was taking us around, a very lovely woman. And she's walking down the street, and we passed these 3 guys standing on the street corner, drinking a little wine, talking, smoking cigarettes, having fun. And they see her. And that one guy, he stands up and he puts his hands in the air and he says, "Girl, you got to stop." And I heard that and I went, wow, that was a line in a poem. Because you got to either stop being so beautiful or stop and talk to us right now. And I don't know, these guys might have been very literate. I'm not sure. But it doesn't matter. There are a lot of people who hang out on street corners, don't ever read a book, and they can tell you a story, make you laugh all day long. They can say, "Oh man, did you see that one?" Yeah, well then you don't know the real story. And then they tell you these things. It's great, And so I like to read. I love reading. A lot of people love reading. Some of them are writers, some of them are not.
All right, and because of time, I only have time for 1 more question, and this will be our last question, and then we'll get into the signing portion. Excuse me.
Hi, thank you for being here. In your book on writing, you mentioned that you revised until you reached the point when you had a problem you didn't solve.
Right.
Was there such a moment in Ghalen, and if not, could you discuss another time you had a problem in a book you couldn't solve?
Well, in every book, what she's saying is somebody wants to ask me, they said, when do you know that a novel is finished? And so I said, well, you, that's a beautiful poem. Uh, uh, I said, well, I write a draft and then I rewrite it. And then I rewrite it again. And every time I rewrite it, I see something that's not working and I make changes. And I keep doing that. I said, well, this is not right. Let me fix it. This is not right. Let me fix it. This is not right. Let me fix it. And then finally, I get to a place where I say, oh, this is not right. And I can't fix it. I don't know how. Because whatever I do is going to mess up something else. And so that's when it's finished. Turn it, and that's it. That's true. There's 5 or 6 things in Ghalen that, you know, I wish I could have done better or differently. But I couldn't fix it. So I left it. You know, because there's no perfect novel. That's the thing. There are no perfect books. There are beautiful books. But, you know, I love the hell out of Moby Dick. But, you know, I mean, that was written at a time when people didn't have newspapers, radios, televisions. They had town criers. That was it. So if you're going to write about whaling, you're going to have to say everything about whaling. You know, I hate that part of it. You know, I said, damn, I wish we could get to some more action. You know, but I got to figure out how you render oil from whales. Okay, fine. You know, and but you know, but it doesn't matter because, you know, there are no perfect people. There are no perfect novels. There are no perfect paintings. Listen, the moon used to be a lot closer to the Earth, you know, much closer, half the distance it is now. But as it turns around, it keeps on going further and further out, you know, a couple of millimeters every year. And there's a lot of years. And so it's not a perfect orbit, you know, but that's life.
And you know, what I can say is with all the novels that you've written, there are multiple, in my opinion, that have come very close to perfection. And I appreciate you as an author and in this conversation, in meeting you, appreciate you as a person. Can y'all please give Mr. Walter Mosley a round of applause? All right, y'all. We're going to break into the signing portion. The way that it's set up is that we're going to sign books first, and he's going to go through them, and then we'll do pictures if you want to do pictures.
If you wait, I will like stand up but you know, my 74-year-old legs don't want to stand up and sit down and sit up and sit down. So at the end of it, and I know somebody can stand next to me, but I'd rather just pose with you. It'd be great.
And then now Donna's going to take the mic.
Okay, you know, we gotta do our picture with Walter Mosley and our video. So Diane, go ahead and.
Well, I'm going to say, because he said New York is the literary capital, the center. But quite of y'all been to some of these book signings. Y'all know I'm really trying to rock with Texas and Midwest. And I'm trying to get all these authors all for the 13 County Book Tour in 2026. So I do want us to have a lot of energy when we stand up and cheer because we want them to hear it all the way in New York. What we coined as literary center. But we know now those numbers are changing, and what we've been through this political season and everything that we go through, we know that we have some major numbers in Texas. And so true crust to earth will rise. So I think we got the numbers here, and we're working hard to make this what I
No, what you about to do?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So we're gonna do selfie, and then we're gonna walk you over to your table. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to have everybody stand up, please. Dominique, grab your book. And Mr. Mosley, Dominique, your arms are longer than mine, so you're gonna have to do the selfie.
So tell me what I just
Oh, no.
piece of plastic broke off.
Yes. Oh, it's the plastic. It's okay.
So you want me to take the picture or
Yeah.
the video?
Yeah, both. We're gonna do the picture. We're gonna do the picture first and do the video.
I don't know how to use your phone. So.
Okay. I don't.
All right.
Be careful. Wait.
I'm just gonna
Okay, you're not gonna fall, okay. Okay.
This is just the picture, so everybody get ready to pose for the picture.
Wait, let me get my books too. I know.
This is the one, she the one that did the live thing too. She can get me started.
I'm sorry, I'm never ready, okay? Do you have me in the picture?
We have that recorded, that you're never ready.
1, 2, 3, this is the picture. We got one more picture, and then we're gonna do a video.
The whole room too.
The whole room, I'm gonna scan the whole room.
What we saying?
Ghalen.
Ghalen.
Okay.
The whole room needs to do that. He's holding up the book.
Well,
We're gonna go right over that way.
All right, y'all. Get that new book.
We have order, we do have order here, but I do want to take, I make a special acknowledgement with Judge, and Mary on his, and different people, please come on. You guys, I do want to, I always recognize my elders, and I think it's important, especially if I want to stay here another 20 years.
That's hers.
Yeah. Maybe because I'm not gonna start the line, so I know how to do this. Thank you. So,
Audrey.
I just want to recognize this beautiful lady. They just support us. And she got a lot going on, but she makes her business to come to the book shop. And you guys heard we had a big World Cup event in her district, and so it's a lot of energy right here in the bookstore. So there's a lot of energy that's going on. So I just want to especially recognize these two ladies and just love them now and let them start the line.
Okay, but just play like a little rose.
Okay, if we can all jump behind this first row, and then the second row is gonna lead in behind that, so. we still- Yeah,
Uh,
So I'm doing it in the front row.
yes.
yeah.
Okay. So
Y'all go buy that new book.
Round.